Well, we're going to do this each and every week throughout the college football season. I figured after, one of the most historic runs in the history of the University of Washington's program last year, and I know we started to do this late in the year. My big brother, Damon, jumped aboard and may even at some point over the course of this season thought, you know what, let's not just wait till this team gets good and gets hot and gets to 14-0 and plays in a national championship. Let's start talking about Jedd Fisch and these Huskies week one. And while I don't think they're going to be playing in the 12-team playoff, you just never know in college football. There's always a bunch of surprises that feel like a little bit of a reach, even with my purple hat on and my purple glasses that Salk says I can wear every once in a while. I'm going to kind of set this up over the course of the year and try to use a bit of an outline. I like a play sheet. I like a script to talk to and react to, both as a quarterback, as a broadcaster when I do my games. And I'm going to set it up in three ways: what I learned, what I think, and what I know. What I learned about the Huskies in the opening week and each and every week over the course of this season, what I learned, what I think about them, and especially early in the season, the first quarter of the season where every game is going to be in Seattle, what I think about them. And then ultimately, as I go back and I watch the tape of the game, what I know, what the football tells me, what the Jimmies and the Joes and the X's and the O's really tell me, and what I know about this team. Always a little hard and got to sift through some fool's gold in the first part of a year. But here's what I learned in the season opener. Really two things. I learned that Jedd Fisch is capable and competent. I learned that Jedd Fisch is going to follow in the footsteps of Kalen DeBoer and be a pretty transparent guy. That while he's got a Belichick on his staff and a Carroll on his staff, I think personality-wise, press conference-wise, he's going to lean a lot more Pete Carroll with even fewer words, and is going to cut right to the chase of it and be bluntly honest about his team. And why that is refreshing to me is because that does carry over to his brand and to his sales and to his messaging to the Huskies. He's made it abundantly clear. He wants the 2025 class this February to be the best class in the history of the program. He's on his way to doing that. If they find more success over the course of the season, maybe they jump from 15th into the top 10 and truly be one of the best. And he's doing it by selling, you're going to be a pro when you come to Washington. If you come here, you're going to play for pros like Belichick. You're going to run a pro-style system. I'm going to communicate with you like the guys in the pros do and just be bluntly honest with what you're doing and what you're not doing. And I felt like over the course of that game, certainly in the post game, in the pre-game, that was abundantly clear. This is a pro-style system with a pro-minded coach who's going to be a professional in the way that he bluntly communicates with everybody in and around that program, from the players to the media to the fans. You're going to know what Jedd Fisch believes. And here's what I learned too. That little running back, Jonah Coleman, I shouldn't call him little. That little thick thigh, no, get rid of little, Huard, get rid of little. Thick thighs save lives. Jonah Coleman is a monster. A dude has no surface area to hit. You could do all the tackling drills you want. And certainly Weber State has been a physical program through the years in the Big Sky. I'm sure they did all their tackling drills, and you could do all your live tackling. And Eastern Michigan, who comes in from Ypsilanti, can do all their tackling. And then, that linebacker or that safety or that D end all of a sudden is looking at Jonah Coleman going, what do I hit? I mean, he looks like Maurice Jones-Drew at UCLA. Like he's that far off the ground. And there is no surface area to hit. And he's unbelievably powerful and strong. And everything moves forward. And he had a 55-yarder called back on the second play of the game. Otherwise, he's going to push 200 yards rushing on last Saturday. So Jonah Coleman going to have a fun factor that's going to replace the Rome Odunze, the Jalen McMillan, the Michael Penix, all the superstars that were super talented, but also had a fun factor to watch. Jonah Coleman's going to replace a lot of that fun factor. I certainly learned that. What do I think? What do I think after week one, win over a Big Sky team? What I think, and also watching college football, is Vegas has these Huskies right. They're going to be a 7.5 win team. Then when you just look at the personnel and what they are and what they're not, and I'll get to more of that and what I really do know. But what I think is they're going to be right there in that range with Wisconsin, with Iowa. We'll see if Iowa can actually score like they did in the second half last week. We'll see. I think there's some fool's gold there in the season opener. But just that Nebraska, Rutgers, those teams in that tier, right? There's a Penn State, an Ohio State, I think a Michigan. Oregon did not look great, but I think roster wise, maturity wise, culture development wise, those teams are the head of the class, right? They're sitting up in first class. Washington's an economy plus, and they're right there looking at, hey, Nebraska, how you doing? Hey, Wisconsin, how you doing? Hey, Rutgers, how you doing? Hey, Iowa. Maybe Iowa's pushing the front of the comfort plus, and the Huskies are a few rows behind them, but they're right there. And as I watched most of those teams, and I saw Minnesota up close and personal, another team with like 6-win total this year, like the Huskies are right there. Now, what can they do over this first quarter of the season into the second quarter of the season to maybe find themselves at the top of that economy plus? And that would be 8 or 9 wins. And if Jedd Fisch gets there with this crew, he and staff have done an awesome job. I think they're going to be really good on third downs. I think when you bring in an NFL guy like Belichick, you've got to look at situations. How are we on third down? How are we in 2-minute? How are we in these situations that really do and are the biggest mark of the NFL, even bigger than college football? Because in the NFL, you get 8-9 possessions. College, you get 12-13. So you have more bites at the apple, more volume. Situations are still super important, but they're not as heightened as they are in the NFL. So when a Steve Belichick learns under Bill Belichick and knows how important situational football is, how important third downs are, how important 4-minute drives, how important red zone and all those areas, and you come out and you put a 4 for 17, I don't care who you're playing, you've done some pretty good work. So I think I'm going to keep an eye on situational football, both offensively with a pro guy and Jedd Fisch, defensively with absolutely a pro guy and Steve Belichick, and what that really looks like. Lastly, what I know from the tape, what I know from the personnel, what I know looking at these Huskies from the first 60 minutes of action is this line of scrimmage does not have Elijah Qualls, Greg Gaines, or Vita Vea, the crew that really elevated that team. And I know there was Jake Browning and Buddha and all sorts of stars, blue chip players. But the reason they made that national semifinal was inside Vita Vea, really the tip of the spear, along with Gaines, who's still playing in the league, and Qualls, who had a cup of coffee. Like, you had NFL dudes that just made that D-line dominant, and they took them to the national semifinal. Last year, yes, it was Penix and Rome and great perimeter players, but first round Troy Fautanu at left tackle, first round Roger Rosengarten, or second round Roger Rosengarten at right tackle. You had bookend NFL dudes that just elevated everybody around them and solidified an offensive line and a line of scrimmage that, while defensively you were average and Braylon Trice was exceptional, I know that this year the line of scrimmage, Jedd Fisch and his staff and Brendan Carroll, who works with those guys, and defensively they're going to have to work incredibly hard to at times mask what they are with the size and strength deficiencies, especially as they get into Big Ten play and especially when they go on the road, and all of that becomes that much more important. I know that's going to be a challenge for this team over the course of the year. And again, if you want to get from the back of Economy Plus to the front of Economy Plus, and you want to go from a 6-7 win team that some see you as and be an 8-9 win team, then masking deficiencies up front and then developing some of those young people. They played a bunch of guys. Jedd Fisch said, yeah, we're going to rotate that offensive line because it really hasn't differentiated themselves as players. It's going to be 7 or 8 of them. They're going to have to do it as a group. And the same thing on that defensive line for Belichick that gave up some yards and I think over 100 yards rushing to Weber State. Like, yeah, it's not going to be dominant there. And therefore, to compete with the Ohio States and Penn States and, the top upper crust who has line of scrimmage game, I know that that's going to be a challenge over the course of the year. What I learned, what I think, what I know. We're going to do it each and every week. We're going to bring in some guests over the course of the season for sure. Lastly, I was just reminded heading into week 1, really on our Washington Wednesday on air a week ago, when I said to Salk, like, think about it. Think how crazy it is that we are sitting here on the precipice of a Husky football season, and you look back at the last 12 months, and you say to yourself, yep, Kalen DeBoer took them to the second half of Michigan in a tightly contested national championship game. Yep, he's now at Alabama because of course, Nick Saban decide to leave college football. Oh, Michael Penix, of course, was the runner-up to the Heisman Trophy and the number 8 pick in the NFL draft. And from Rome Odunze to Fautanu to Roger Rosengarten, what an unbelievable run the 2023 season was. I don't expect 2024 to have quite those mountaintops, but I do expect it to be an amazing journey, navigated by a head coach who knows what he wants, a QB in Will Rogers that I didn't even mention, 20-27, super efficient, who's thrown for almost 13,000 yards and knows how to play the game and play it at a high level. This is going to be a journey and a navigation this season that's going to lead to a lot of fun when we talk about learning, thinking, and knowing. So that's a little Dawg Talk with Brock as we kick off the 2024 Husky football season.